got everything all cleaned up and cleaned out and ready to go, man.
I bet
Yeah.
after that great summer you had, they probably had a good time with you. You
Oh
over there
yeah.
eating them good Wisconsin
Oh,
snacks and them craft desserts and restaurants that you've been sliding into, getting a taste of this Wisconsin, these Wisconsin delicacies that we have.
oh man,
You know,
that has been the best part of Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and being here is just some of the great food spots that are around town.
just never know what you're gonna find. People are always surprised when they find little places here, like, oh man, I didn't know about that little spot over there that served. Yeah, you just got to kind of go outside of what you're used to. It's okay to
Mhm.
slide away from the norm sometime and try take a guy out, take a lady out to a nice spot downtown that you ain't never heard of. Just slide down the
It's them little spots, them hidden spots, the ones that don't have the big signage or
yeah,
any of that on it.
that's
That's the really
yeah.
good ones.
Sometimes, yeah, right. You said they don't usually be those spots. They usually don't have lit up signs. You gotta kind of either look at what's been trending on some of these Instagram sites or some of these local sites,
Mhm.
and the local eatery sites that people have just promoted or started pumping out the blue. You got so many spots now that you
Mhm.
can see, what type of food you want to try. Go to one of these little, either it's a speakeasy, a bar, or fine dining, and
You forgot the supper club,
yeah, oh yeah,
the famous Wisconsin supper club
which
that's
one?
around here.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
like that.
yeah,
That's a staple of
yeah. Oh
Wisconsin.
yeah.
Back in Ohio, we don't have supper clubs or any
Okay,
of
like a
that.
5 o'clock
So
steakhouse. Have you been to
yeah,
5 o'clock steakhouse yet, or any of
not
those
yet.
like that?
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. We got some nice, yeah, some nice little spots you could just kind of dip off into. They got the low lights,
Hmm.
get you a nice steak or something like that. Especially if you can get it all there, a good solid drink, a good steak, and
Hmm.
some good sides to go with your food.
Nothing more Wisconsin.
Yeah. So we have a surprisingly warm weather today.
Whew.
Man, look, I just came from working at, and I want to always give big ups to our partners. Share the love.
Share the love.
Just dropped off a few boxes. Thanks again, Joe, for helping me get those
Yeah.
boxes to the truck.
Yeah. No problem.
So we out there today, just letting the community know we're just doing some canvassing with one of our partners. We just have some, just some literature to get out. We're
Hmm.
working with the NAACP Milwaukee, which is one of our partners as well. We're just working with our team that we were just finished our voter registration with, and I do want to always recognize them because they do their
Hmm.
thing as well. So Reese, Emmanuel, DJ, Ayawa,
Ken.
Ken, yeah, and Nick. They were out there doing their thing, getting ready to go out to the community this morning. So again, thank y'all for stepping up and coming back and doing what you do with
Yeah.
Wisconsin Voices and our partners. And outside of that, it's a weekend, or it wasn't too bad. Yesterday we kind of talked about the weekend, but it was a weekend full of events for Milwaukee
Yep.
and voter registration events and artists performing, which I always like to see. And talking to talking to Nisha yesterday,
Hmm.
she said that a good amount of people who were at this concert in um, L, you might have heard about that concert they had too, but yeah, Milwaukee Land, yeah, or the other one outside of that with the what was the name of that concert that had yeah, it was at Midtown with Chicken P and all the yeah. Okay. Yeah, so they had an early voting concert, and they said a lot of people who were at the concert went across the street to get registered to vote. So
That's awesome.
that's a beautiful thing, and it was no issues. It was smooth. So I am happy to see that regardless of who or how people decided to get their concerts going,
Hmm.
they're getting people registered to vote, and that's the bigger picture.
That's
So
all it's about.
if y'all biting styles of other groups, that's cool. But
Yeah.
also thank you to all the teams and organizations out here that's getting people registered to vote. Too bad that we didn't do any collaborations with some of y'all to kind of get the concert going more with some of the organizations we didn't work with. So, oh, look what's on the screen right there. We got election day 1 week
I'm
away. Early
I'm going to
voting.
tell you
Yeah.
about the elections this year. We're gearing up at Wisconsin Voices. We have been
Yeah.
for months now with the voter registration.
Tell
Assisting
them what you've been
folks.
doing, Joe. Tell them what you've been doing,
Oh
man. What's going
man,
on?
we got we have plans. Election day, where it's going to be, I think, a long day for all the staff at Wisconsin Voices. We're going to be making sure that folks that are in line at by 8 p.m. that they get it they have their voice heard. They get to cast their vote. We have some poll watchers that are going to be out there. We also have a training program coming up this Thursday via Zoom. If you'd like to sign up for that, you can go on our Facebook or on our website, sign up real quick, and you could be a poll observer anywhere around the city here for us. So we'd love to have more of have more participants in that. But the numbers have been really starting to skyrocket, and this is just, it warms my heart and makes me happy. We set another record for this election cycle with 6,151 ballots cast in early voting yesterday.
Okay.
So we just shattered.
I know a couple of people who dropped off their ballots yesterday. So yeah, I like that.
I had mentioned it yesterday on yesterday's show that the numbers went down a little bit over the weekend, and we see that with some of the restricted hours, some of the locations not being open. And it was really my hope that we'd see that pick up again on Monday, and it did. And I'm just hoping that we see that trend continue through this week, as early voting continues through this Sunday.
That steady flow. Okay.
Absolutely. But really encouraging numbers. Again, that watcher training is this Thursday via Zoom. You can sign up on our Facebook. There's a link on our Facebook page, and there's also a link on our website at wisconsinvoices.org.
Appreciate that, Joe. Thank you. Thanks for that info. All right. We have a guest today. Hailing out of Glendale, Wisconsin, way of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shout out Atkinson.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, but never mind. This is Glendale here with us today.
My name is Tamika Vukovic.
What's going on?
I'm
What brings you?
Whew, I'm sorry, but we out there getting out the vote.
That weather is beautiful out there.
Sometimes, we be late sometime. Why? Because we be getting out the vote.
That's right.
Got to take care of the people.
I think, what did you guys do today? Y'all were
we just
handing out literature.
Just went over there and dropped that literature off too. Went over there. I shouted out the crew that's over there. I seen everybody this morning.
Shout out to Share the Love, Veronica.
Yeah.
They are doing amazing
work.
Trying
to get me to eat a whole bunch of donuts and coffee this morning. I said, nope, not today. Not today. That coffee last week had me on edge. I can't do it every week. You make me feel like something about to happen all day. That little anxiousness and anxiety you get.
If I have more than one cup, I'm
good, man. I had one last week in the office, the Twix one that's sitting in there. I'm like, all right, I know which one is gonna give you problems, so I'm gonna have to water it down or something. But yeah, we've been busy. Yeah, it's nice and it's beautiful weather. It's that weather you need to go out there and do like some of that, the canvassing work and talking to the people. I was looking at a young guy outside of the studio yesterday here across the street, and he was outside, and I was like, oh, I feel pretty good with him. He had a light jacket on. He didn't have to worry about running in, running out, trying to stay warm. So, if you got people out there, if you canvassing or if you want to go and support some of our organizations that's out here doing some work, it's the day to do it. Matter of fact, how long will it be like this?
Through tomorrow, I believe.
Okay.
We are we're gonna have a guest on later on today. Representative Kaylin Haywood is coming in to talk about one of the main things that people don't understand is what happens when you have a majority in the assembly and the Senate. What's the pros, what's the cons of having you being the minority or you being in the majority? He's going to come and explain that stuff to you. But I do want to talk about one of the wonderful people who are around and about and ask questions to Wisconsin Voices, because sometimes they think we know everything and we don't. Sometimes we have to go and research it ourselves. But one question was about the tariffs, and the person asked, you don't talk about what tariffs mean to us. So I'm going to get into that right after we find out who this caller is. But that's an interesting topic, and we're going to go about that. Let's see who this caller is. Caller, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. How are you this morning?
Just fine. Good. By the grace of Allah, and assalamu alaikum to you all. Yes, sir. I'll just simply call because of this. And I don't know if you guys have heard about it or has anybody paid any attention to it. Like, I don't even know if this is under you guys' purview of things to talk about. but I just noticed, I saw something on the news, I should say, that there are like 12 or 13 schools on the north side that are like being considered to be closed or consolidated or something like that. And I'm wondering, like, I haven't heard any uproar about it. I heard a lot of stuff about the black superintendent who had to resign and all of that. Not from you guys. That's not anything to you all, but I'm just saying that, like, this is not as important, if not more important. Then why is it that always when they decide to dismantle or deconstruct something, the people who are impacted the most are black people, not these people of color. The colored people I'm not concerned with, and that's another topic. But black people on the north side are being, like, have bullseyes, a gigantic, big, giant bullseye on 12 or 13 schools where black people predominate at. And I don't hear anybody talking about, not you guys again, about it, but people who talk about those things, I haven't heard anybody have a major outcry about it other than on the news, because I was not aware of it. And thank you for taking my call.
Well,
you guys
before you hang
keep
up,
it up. Yes, ma'am.
before you hang up, I want to tell you that was one of the topics that Joe was
Yep.
going to talk about
Yeah,
today.
we was
Oh,
actually- we was
my
gonna say-
bad.
that
My
was it.
bad. I apologize.
Oh no,
No,
it's
it's
great.
not an apology. It's just that he had brought it up and wanted to talk about it today. So, sit back and listen to what he has.
I'm like, wow. Did y'all see that?
Yeah,
All
it-
right,
it-
all right, I'll listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
We
you so
appreciate
much.
that.
I had the same reaction when I saw it. I was like, all these are on the north end. All these are in the communities that we serve, that Wisconsin Voices serves. And I was just kind of taken back. And then I started to really think, about the potential impact with this election, with Project 2025. And if that were to be implemented and some of the funding that our schools receive, how is that going to further impact MPS? And how is that going to further impact the black community, especially on the north side, where they're going to look to do more budget cuts, more building cuts, more consolidation, larger classrooms? I mean, we're talking about right now, just last year, total federal funding that was budgeted is $327 million from the Department of Education to the city of Milwaukee. That's $327 million of the Department of Education is eliminated that we will no longer receive. So if you think the cuts are bad now,
Yeah.
can you imagine if Project 2025 goes through and we see a cut of $327 million? It was $52.2 million of that is for student nutrition services. And $39.4 million of that is for operational expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about kids' food, talking about the ability for kids to be able to eat lunch at school, for their schools to stay open, for the maintenance on those schools, for the curriculum, the education. These are the fundamental things that are important to the education system. And
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there a lot? Does it say it cuts on administration?
cuts on administration.
That is under administration?
I'm sure there would be. I don't think that there's actually been a budget put in. If all that were removed, this is what our cuts would be.
But see, that's
But I'm sure there would be administrated. There would
but
have
no,
to be.
no, not necessarily. See, this is where there is funding that goes directly to services
Mhm.
of children,
You're right.
like
Yep.
books, teachers. Those are direct
Mhm.
services that go to a child.
Right. Not
And-
salaries.
and not salaries. And I don't want to. I'm glad I'm off the Glendale River Hill School Board now, so I can just kind of tell my opinion. But you don't need an assistant to assistant to an assistant in that administrative roles. You just don't. And they are very top heavy on the administrative side. And most of these places are top heavy. All these school districts are really top heavy on the administrative side.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, there are definitely people who, like, if you are special needs, you work in there has to be a director of special needs because they're kind of over everything. And then she probably needs to have an assistant, but to have an assistant, for her to have an assistant, that is where, some of these dollars can be cut and put direct services to the kids. Taking one of those assistants and hiring an actual tutor that is there 24 hours a day, and not just volunteers, but actually hiring a tutor.
But I just question how would our system be affected if Title I funding was taken away?
Oh,
So just under
deep.
Project 2525 transitioning Title I to a quote unquote no strings attached block grant.
And you should probably tell people what Title I is, just so they know. Like,
Title I is the money that goes to the higher population school districts that are typically low income families or low income students that attend there. So in other words, I can only think of really two counties that would be affected in Wisconsin, and that's Milwaukee and Dane.
and a little bit in Green Bay.
And a little
I
bit
mean,
there.
in
but those would be the two
Green Bay
largest
area.
affected
Yeah,
by
but
something like
Yeah.
that.
But that is exactly right, because those two, when I was on the school board, I used to, I was the representative for the Glendale River Hill School District for the, as a voting block for the, what is it called? The School Board Association. And there's probably a little over 400 plus school districts in the state of Wisconsin. And when they used to bring up resolutions that we had to vote on, it was a majority rule. But here, the thing that killed me, it was like one representative for Milwaukee. That was it. And then there was one representative for, Madison, these bigger school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? When we had something that would affect Black and brown kids, we literally had to beg, push, pull to just get people to vote because it didn't affect them.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought money was going to be taken away from their smaller districts or their smaller schools. So they decided, no, we're not going to vote for that. I remember one time we had a vote where they were, and I think this was 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, where all we wanted was to make sure, because there is a certain amount of by rules, you have to talk about Native American studies. I think it was that, and they were saying, why don't we just put all hair, like Native American, Jewish, Black, African American, and they voted against it. The other thing was giving civics information, and I remember this one distinctively: civic information, nonpartisan, but just civic information about how do you register to vote, what is the electoral college, just stuff like that. And they did not want it in. That's the parents' decision to decide what they're going to tell their kids and where it's not. But this is non-partisan stuff.
Yeah.
This is literally, this is just what
you should be
You
learning
should know,
You
yeah.
should be learning in civics class in school.
Right. But they voted it down, and it was handily voted down because most of the area, and this is what used to kill me, is because people used to say the rural area has no place. They don't have a say. Yeah, they have most of the say in the state of Wisconsin, because look at Milwaukee. They have 5 or 6 representatives, I guess, in the area. And then the rest of the state. And anytime you want something from Milwaukee, you have to work with other people around the state. But it's not like they can just get what they want because the population is all here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that.
Right.
It's so, you can give more information if you have it about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a list of the schools with you or no?
Yeah, I got them.
Brian has a list of the schools, but just one other thing that we as you talked about, teaching civil rights and and that sort of thing, but scaling back the federal government's ability to enforce civil rights laws like Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination, Title VI, which prohibits race-based discrimination, by moving enforcement to those laws to the Justice Department and requiring that the federal government litigate potential violations in court rather than through the more common route of negotiating settlements with school districts to change their practices. So that's another thing that Project 2025 would do. Another thing is that they would be distributing special education funds. You'd mentioned special education there, Tamika. Distributing special education funds under the Individuals with Disability Act to school districts as a no strings attached block grant as well, or directly into education savings accounts for parents to use on private schools and other educational expenses.
Okay, we got a caller. Caller, go ahead.
Yes. My question is, now they're coming up with this, closing all these inner city schools right now at this time. Why wasn't the public notified about this at the time when they asked us to vote on the referendum for to refund the schools and us to okay to donate all that money coming out of our taxes? At that time, now if they could see this right now at this time, I'm quite sure someone had to be informed that all these schools or whichever, I don't know what the thing is, but I'm really thinking about this. Just something don't sit right with me with this. Talking about closing all these inner city schools up at this time. I mean, we never had this problem when I was going to school here. And believe me, it's just something that's not smelling right about this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to. I don't want to speculate. I'm not going to speculate on what they knew or what they didn't know at the time of that referendum. I'm not going to do that. But this is where, when we keep talking about voting, know who you're putting in. I know some of the school directors are trying to tell their districts what's going on. I know for a fact, I've seen a couple of letters out or information being out for those school districts. The school, what are those? The directors, they're telling their districts. So I don't know. Maybe you need to look and see who your school district director is and give them a call. You can call the school board, the district office, and I can give you that number. It's 414.
My sister works for the school board. I will try to look into this more myself because she has been down there some over 20 years. So, yeah, but only my grandkids are going to school at this time.
Well, you still are paying for your grandkids, though. I mean,
yeah, I know I'm paying for my grandkids because they're taking this straight out of my taxes.
Yep. So you're paying for them. You have a right to know what's going on as well. Even if you don't have kids in the district, you have a right to know because you're still paying for those schools. If you do want to call and ask for information, the number is 414-475-8393. Again, that is.
Wait a minute. Let me see. Write that down. 414.
475
8393. 8393.
All right, thank you, sir.
What number is that?
That is to the MPS district office.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, these are when we tell you. Now remember, some of those school board I believe some of those school board openings are up this year in April.
Yep.
They have do they have a meeting today? They have a meeting tonight, but they're also, remember, go in there, watch who your representative is, see if you like the work they're doing.
Ask them what their plan is.
Yeah, write an email to them and ask them what their plan is or what they think. You have every right to ask those questions. Now you can't, and realistically, if a whole bunch of people, they might have to do a whole, a just like an email to try to address all the concerns. Maybe that's how they do it. They may not talk to you individually, but they will put something out and you just have to pay attention, to, all right, are you on their email address or email list? Are you, can you put me on the district email list?
It's like we got
There's a
another
lot
call.
of there's a lot of information out there. But be fair. If they trying to do what's right, then support them. If you don't like what they're doing, then don't support them. I mean, but make them answer these questions. All right, we're gonna have one more caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hello, Tamika. Hello, everybody from Wisconsin Voices.
Hello,
Hello.
Doctor. This is Dr. Lakeisha Myers.
Hello.
It is. I was listening to your conversation, and I agreed with some of the issues that your last caller raised, and some of the conversation that you all were having. I wanted to make the public aware that the caller asked about why the public was not aware that this could be an option when the referendum was being discussed. It was on the table. It just wasn't publicly discussed, because this has been an issue as far as right sizing the district for a long time. When you look at schools that are underutilized, a lot of those schools are on the north side of the city, because many of our children are bused to the south side of the city, where there are burgeoning classrooms and wait lists for kids to get into school. But there's been a systemic disinvestment in north side schools, because a lot of times parents have fled to the south side thinking their children will get a better education. So we have to do some internal diagnosis on that as well as a community, because if your child goes to a school in, let's say, the 53206 or 53212 zip code, then they are 9 times out of 10 more likely to have a substitute teacher teach them at least 2 to 3 grades per their elementary years, and not have a certified teacher in their classroom or be taught by a sub. Whereas children who are on the south side of the school district are able to have licensed teachers teach them K through 5. So we know when you start talking about learning how to read, teaching reading, they do that in kindergarten through grade 3. After grade 3, you are reading for comprehension, and you should already know how to read. So when you look at some of the things that we've done, and this has been administrative policy that I've asked about for years, as an educator that has a license, I choose where I want to go work. There are not a lot of people who want to choose to work in 53206 or work in 53212. So if we didn't change administrative policy at the school board level to have teachers go where the needs are and incentivize schools that have the greatest needs, that's one of the issues we've been having. But also with our children being bused across the city and kids getting on buses early in the morning going over to the south side as well. So if some of that is on the onus of parents, it's on the district as well, but we have to take some responsibility for that as well.
Well, it's to me, it's almost like, and I'm a product of 220. And back in the 70s, when I went into the 220 program, it was like, if you could get your kid to a suburban school, you were going to get a leg up. Some of that is possibly true. Maybe it's not true, but I remember then, like, people who, like, some of my friends went to Washington and Custer. They had the same exact books and the same exact homework that I did.
Exactly.
So,
but one thing about Chapter 220 was created in 1976 by federal statute, because there was de facto segregation in Milwaukee public schools. So the other piece of that is you're still lingering with the history that MPS did not hire African American teachers in earnest probably until the 1950s, really closer to 1960. When you start talking about who was able to be hired, there were only certain schools that Black children could go to at one point in time, and then they started intact busing in MPS as well, where students would go with their teacher on a bus and be bused across town to a white school, but have to come back to the Black school to eat lunch and then go back to the white school to have afternoon classes. So there was no real integration in that model either. So Chapter 220 was created as a way to supposedly balance. If you know anything about the Boston desegregation case, as far as busing that happened there, that was one of the models that was used, and that's why Chapter 220 was created. Chapter 220 has now been phased out by the state of Wisconsin because of, open enrollment, which could be considered the largest choice program that we have in the state. The issue with open enrollment is that there is no transportation
And that
allotment.
is the hugest. It's no different than anything else. They get a little bit less money than when they had 220, but because of that transportation component, that is the key. And the thing is, and I found out that a lot of you can actually kick kids out of open enrollment because of their absentee or that they're being late. And I think in every single, when I was on the Glendale River Hill School Board, I voted against every single time somebody brought that in, because you knew that person was not from the district. You knew Glendale River Hill.
Well, there's a financial incentive for suburban districts taking students from Milwaukee.
Right.
It's $7,000. So there's a financial incentive to suburban districts taking Milwaukee children too.
But there's also in some of that, but the open enrollment also like affected Glendale River Hill School District, where we had quite a few people. We got I'm gonna go on the record. I think we got a little too ethnic, so people started open enrolling out, because Glendale River Hills is about 56-57% kids of color. And so they started enrolling out to the other suburban schools like Fox Point, Bayside, and the other areas going into Shorewood and Whitefish Bay. So yes, there is some, like I know our school district took hits because of open enrollment. We brought kids in, but we also had a whole bunch of kids brought out, and it was less than 10%. But everybody thought that our school district, oh, you're just taking all these school kids or these kids of color from Milwaukee. It was less than 10% of our, so it's about 100 kids out of 1,000 that we were
right. And
in.
if you pay attention to the trends as well, Nicolet has its own school district, so therefore they have little to no open enrollment seats for high school.
Exactly. And that's one of the things also. They maybe take one, maybe two kids possible, which is, we've been fighting with them, the 3 feeder schools, begging and pleading them just to take our open enrollment kids, and our open enrollment kids who are doing great in school and they've been with these kids forever end up going to the private schools. I know a lot of our Glendale River Hills kid went to Milwaukee Lutheran, Wisconsin Lutheran, ended up at Reagan, King, Riverside, and they all ended up in those schools. Carmen.
And that's one of the trends that MPS is seeing too, that they will get students to start with them in the district, kindergarten through probably 3rd to 5th grade. And by middle school age, they leave the district but come back for high school.
Right. And they do it only because of, certain high schools. Thank you, it's Representative Lakeisha Myers, also Dr. Lakeisha Myers.
All right, thank you.
Call anytime and give us insight. If you have any other information, there's a school board meeting today, correct?
I do believe it is, yes.
Okay. Well, maybe she can give us some insight on it at another time after this.
Okay.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to have Kaylin Haywood on. We're going to be right back with Be a Voice with Wisconsin Voices, 860 AM, 106.5 FM. Wisconsin Voices. We have one more caller to take before we talk to Kaylin. Hello, caller. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a shame that we have to wait for our kids to be in school to know if they know how to read and write. People, you must push your kid to the educational boundaries. You must teach your kids how to read and write before they enter the school district. So you don't have to have a worry about saying, well, they didn't teach my kid nothing. Well, if you put your kid somewhere and you're waiting on somebody else to teach them how to be a better person, it's never going to happen. It has to start at home. You have, instead of buying them guns, buy them books. Instead of buying them toys, buy them books, buy them stuff to educate them, so their future can be brighter than just being out in the streets and you just turn them out here and then we wondering why it's kids running around here with guns in their pants pockets with long clips on them that's shooting people that's hungry, that's got to rob people because they don't, their mindset is they don't care. Come on, we have to change this. And Milwaukee Public School been failing these people for over 50 years.
Thank you, sir. I think overall we have to pay attention. I think he has a point where he talks about like getting gifts. I've seen people spend, and it's up to them because they got their money to spend, but I've seen people spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a 1-year-old, 2-year-old's Christmas. And it'll be all these clothes and toys and not one little thing about ABCs,
Right.
or one little thing about that's when their mind soaks up the most. And
Mhm.
I'm guilty of some of that. I never spent a whole lot. Jada's favorite store was, we got her, she loved her some Walmart, cheap stuff. Oh, that's the best store ever. She didn't know what Victoria's Secret was or any of these places until she got old enough to save her own money. But maybe we should do that. Before Kaylin comes on, though, I want to flip because I do want to talk about the tariff, because someone the tariff, because somebody asked, and Joe, we were talking about this the other day, and it was interesting when someone asked, she's like, yeah, but he gonna put Donald Trump, and this is not against anybody, but he said he's gonna put a tariff on and we gonna get our money. And here's the definition of a tariff: is a tax imposed by a government on goods or services that are imported between countries.
Mhm.
So what that means is he want with this, and he is going to put a tariff on all things coming in from China.
Mhm.
What this means is China will make the product. The United States businesses who import will buy the product. But to get the product, say, and I'm going to be maybe simple, they want to get $10 worth of a product. And then what did he say? What percentage he said he was going to put on?
I can't remember. I've heard a couple different numbers, but we all know where those prices trickle down to.
Right. So what happens even if he puts I think last time I heard 100%.
Yeah. It's
tariff.
I've heard some lower numbers. I've heard some ridiculous numbers.
Let's just say even a 10%.
Yeah.
On something that is $100. What they're gonna do is add $10 to the cost of that, so it ends up being $110 to buy it instead of the $100.
The consumer eats the cost.
And even though you will pay for it, so instead of you being able to pay only $100, you're gonna pay $110 for something that is really worth only $100, and that you should only be paying $100 for it. So
Right.
when a tariff can go both ways. It can be imposed on exports or imports. So it depends on what it is. But the way he is Donald J. Trump is putting it, he wants to put it on imports coming in. So you are not saving any money. That's going to add money that you have to take out of your pocket to get those services. And most of those services, like y'all love Walmart so much, that is where most of those items are coming from, in Walmart.
Yep.
Just wanted to give you that little taste. But we have, oh, you got cologne on today. We have State Representative Kaylin Haywood. Kaylin, were you the youngest?
Yes.
You were the youngest to be elected to the state rep. Are you
Yeah.
still the youngest?
I'm still the youngest. 25 now. I was 19, but I'm still pretty young, you know.
I don't know. You started, when they say you go into office, you start getting gray hairs and wrinkles.
What happened to me?
Yeah, look what happened to him. He went into office. He had a full head of hair.
One term.
One term is like,
That's
boom.
it. I was
Look
done.
at this. I
It-
used
it-
to have pretty black hair, and now this is my 8th year, and I got all kind of grays.
I always say President Obama is the best example of, like, when he went in, he was this young, jet black hair, no wrinkles. 8 years later,
Boom.
he's been president.
How are you?
Told some things.
I'm doing all right. We are a couple of days out from November 5th. And, we're pushing. It's just been busy, but I'm feeling good.
So, one of the things that we were, we brought you on here for your experience, not to really talk about the politics, but I
Mhm.
want you. Everybody keep hearing that we're trying to either party is trying to take the majority, or we want to be the majority party in the state. And I don't know how many people understand what that means, or what's the benefits of being it, what is the disadvantages of being that. And I know you're in right now, the Democrats are in the minority leadership or minority right now at the state, and you are part of that minority leadership, correct?
Correct.
So we want to, if you could just explain some of that, because I think that's important to understand as people are getting out to vote. Why am I voting? Why do I want to vote Republican or Democrat? Why can't I vote independent? Right now, the way the system, I'm not saying right, wrong, but the way the system is, this is why we have to know how it works.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, when it comes to the state legislature, which is the state assembly and the state senate, in some states it's called the state house and state senate, but there are 99 state reps like myself. I represent one of the 99 districts, which is the sensational 16th district, which is part of central Milwaukee, but also part of downtown. And the Senate's 33 folks. So we get elected. Representatives represent about 60,000 folks in each district. Senators there's a third of them as there is us, so they represent about 180 folks and 180,000 folks in their districts. But once we are elected to Madison, so you elect me to go to Madison as the rep for the 16th, I am now a part of this caucus. And right now there's a two-party system, primarily in the U.S. and in Wisconsin, no different. It's the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus. They make up either the minority or the majority. For the last decade or so, Republicans have held the majority in the state capitol, so they've been the majority in the state senate, as well as the majority in the state assembly. And the Democrats have been the minority. How you decide which one's that is based on who has the most seats. So in the assembly, whoever has 50 seats will be the majority. 50-seat majority isn't the best thing in the world, but it is the majority nonetheless. And the majority party gets to decide who the speaker of the assembly will be. The speaker of the assembly gets to then decide what committees will be created to focus on what issues. The speaker also gets to decide staffing for those offices and who gets staff and how much staff get in those offices, who do a big bulk of the work. The speaker also decides who will chair those committees and those committee assignments. So chairs of committees, like it is at the city, have a lot of power. They decide, once the speaker assigns a bill to that committee, they decide whether that bill lives or dies. A lot of bills from the Democratic side as a minority tend to die in committee. They get assigned. If they get assigned the bill number, they go to committee, and the committee chairperson literally does nothing with them. They sit there the entire session. If they're not voted on by end of the session, they just die.
On that note, do they even get hearings, or sometimes they don't even get hearings?
Well, historically, Democratic bills that have been introduced, about 3% of the bills we introduce each cycle actually get a hearing. So we gotten some good wins as of late, but at the same time, the vast majority of the bills Democrats put up do not get a hearing, and that's at the sole discretion of the chair of the committee. We can push for it. We meet with the chair. We have folks come in and lobby. But at the end of the day, it's up to the committee chair. Sometimes they just don't like the bill and don't want to hear it. Sometimes they're given orders to not hear the bill. But the committee chair decides that bill gets a hearing. But then if that bill gets a hearing, it has to go to executive session to get an actual vote. So there have been Democratic bills, that 3% of bills that do get a hearing, but never go to executive session for actual vote to pass out of committee.
Because that is also decided what goes to executive
session of the committee by the chair. Okay. Bills that do go through executive session and receive a passing vote go to the floor of the entire body, and then the entire assembly gets to vote on that. But even with that, once the bills are out of committee, they are sent to the rules committee, which is made of mostly leadership and some other members. I serve on the rules committee. The rules committee then has to decide what bills go to the actual floor. The chair of the rules committee is the majority leader on the Republican side, or the majority caucus. That chair decides which bills actually get put on the calendar for the rules committee, same ordeal, and which ones we vote on to go to the floor.
So even though a bill could get to a committee, be assigned a bill number, have a hearing, get out of committee, go to the rules, but it could stop right even there, because the majority leader will say, I don't want it to go for a full vote.
Correct. So and part of my role, so I'm the assistant Democratic leader, so I'm the assistant leader in the minority caucus. One of my biggest roles is to negotiate with Republicans, the majority leader, to negotiate with the majority leader on which bills get to the rules committees and what bills get to the floor, as well as how much debate time we get on those bills. The rules committee also decides how much debate time will be on those bills. So we might get a bill on the calendar and we might get it to the floor, but then the rules committee can decide that the bill gets 5 minutes of debate, or it gets an hour of debate, or whatever that may be. So all that logistical work happens in that rules committee, but that is governed by the Republican or the majority caucus, which right now is the Republican caucus. And like any other committee in the assembly, any other standing committee, the committees are stacked where there are more Republican members than Democratic members. So even though there may be a bad bill about any host of voting rights or voter protection, and it's on the calendar now because Republicans want it on the calendar, even if we all vote no in that committee, they can still get it to the floor. Because the majority party decides what the committee makeup will be.
There is now. I got two questions. Number one, I've seen when I've watched Wisconsin Eye, sometimes you guys are there on 24 hours. Is that a certain time? I mean, that they say they're gonna let it go until it goes, or because I've seen you guys sitting at your desks forever.
So how it usually goes is I will meet with the majority leader before we have a session day scheduled. We will negotiate on which bills get to the calendar. Usually whatever bills they want get to the calendar. But also I will negotiate and try to get Democratic bills who have had a committee hearing and pass out of committee to the calendar and on the floor. The ones that are able to get Republicans to agree on getting on the calendar, I might have to negotiate with them as well to get debate time. Because although Republicans control, the majority party controls the votes, I might at the very least, Democrats deserve opportunity to have an open debate in a public forum about these bills. So then we will debate on that. So there's 20 bills on the calendar. Some bills will be easy ones that we all agree on and don't need a bunch of debate time. But some bills will be terrible bills that will be getting passed, but we want to have a discussion about this on the floor. So that debate time is determined by myself and the majority leader from our negotiations, and then given to the rules committee, and the rules committee then votes on that negotiating time.
There is we've been pushing this here at Wisconsin Voices and Be a Voice and Amplify Your Voice about you guys have to know how this stuff goes. So how this goes into gerrymandering. So since our state was one of the most gerrymandered states in the country, when the majority you would look at a general election and the majority would vote Democrat, and it would be a close race. We're not saying it was a huge blowout. I believe we're mostly light Democrat or purple. But if you look at the makeup of the assembly and the Senate, it was like we were a red state. by the way the gerrymandering had happened. Now that the lines have been changed, and this is the first part of what you call voting, because some of the senators were not up. Do you see that there may be a change?
So under the
It's
current
keeping very nonpartisan.
yeah.
You know?
Under the current district maps proposed for the assembly, I believe for both caucuses, for the majority caucus, they are the current majority, and they have some ways to go losing seats before they lose the majority. There's a viable way for them to maintain the majority with slimmer numbers, but also based on the numbers that we have too for the new maps, there's a very viable path for Democrats to retain a 52-seat majority as well. So right now, these seats.
So this is really like a 50-50.
So,
we have to see. There is no like sitting there and going, like 2 years ago, we kind of knew they were going to still have the majority.
No, this go around is up, and we will not know until election night which party will control the assembly. The Senate is different. The Senate will have some shakeup. There will be different numbers in the Senate go around, but there's not, because senators don't run every 2 years. There's not everyone up for re-election, so there's just a little pushed out with that 50-50 chance may be. But for the assembly, right now is a 50-50 shot of who will be in the majority.
And that's what I was talking about, where there's on the odd number or their 4-year terms, half of the assembly will go, or half of the Senate is up right now. And those are the even numbers, I believe.
Yes.
And in 2 years, the odd number, if you're in an odd district, they will be up. So everybody you have a 4-year term. With the assembly, they are up every 2 years.
Every 2 years, every other fall.
So yeah, it's kind of hard because you can't even really get, if you look at it, you go into, so say you start in January, you go through budget,
which is January to June. And then,
hopefully.
So how the terms go, 2-year terms in the assembly. That January you get sworn in. This next one will be January 6th, ironically, where we get sworn in. We will go to the end of June of next year during the budget. The budget is supposed to be passed by end of June of the odd year. We have managed to get that passed every time, even with pushback from both sides. We go into recess for July and August. Usually that's time to go back into the district, connect with residents, host events, host town halls.
Talk about the budget. Hopefully, maybe talking about the budget.
And then we come back in from September to Thanksgiving, and that's when like all the bills that we've introduced that year start to get worked through committee. And that process happens. We go through Thanksgiving traditionally. Thanksgiving time, we go on recess until the beginning of the year. So again, another time to connect with family, loved ones, but also the district and residents, and talk about what's happened this year in the session. And then January and April of the even year, we are wrapping up session for those 4 months. We have not been going all the way to April because of some folks who, the majority party decides how long we stay in session. But we're supposed to stay in session from January to April of the even year, and work on bills and policy. And then from about April to the end of the even year, like now, it is campaign season. We are in full campaign mode, and we are in recess. The session is adjourned until the following January.
One of the things that also is when you're in the budget cycle, so it's January until June. After that, when you go back in after that July and August kind of recess, those are bills that are not attached to the budget.
Correct.
And that is like from January until June, you are debating things that are in the budget or attached to the budget. But after that, you might have to ask for monies for a particular bill, but that then goes to
joint finance,
where the other parts you're trying to actually get your money into the budget, and it's a little bit
it's rough. And you got those 6 months to get into the budget. If it doesn't make it, it has to go through joint finance committee before it goes. So it can go through a house. So there's a housing bill. We got a almost $1 billion housing package passed last session, bipartisan. It wasn't in the budget. It was outside the budget.
Right.
But it had to go through the housing committee on both sides, both houses. Once through housing committee, it has to go to joint finance because there's money attached to it.
Both joint finance.
Yeah, joint finance is a committee made with both houses, Assembly and Senate. Whoever the majority party is, they have 2 co-chairs. They chair those committees, and then they also decide how those committees are made up. Right now, there are only 4 Democrats from both houses, so 2 senators and 2 reps who are on the Joint Finance Committee. The rest of the Minute members are Republicans, and they control that committee and where the money goes.
See, this is why you need to take our Civics 101 class so you can know what's going on. This is just a beginning of what we're going to try to give you information over the next course of from now until January. This is Be a Voice with Wisconsin Voices. Thank you, State Representative Halen Haywood.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. We'll see you back on Friday.
Special to the state.